When I arrived this morning and went down into the fellowship hall, Greg and Richard were there. And I said, when was the last time I was here? We speculated, and we said, well, it had to be a little over a year. And in my mind, I said it had to be longer than that. And then when I got up here and read the prayer list, I noticed Barb Vogel's name. Made me think of her son Hunter. And I remember the last time I was here, he was embarking on his wonderful opportunity of being a West Point cadet. And so I said, how's Hunter doing in West Point? Lynn said, oh, he graduated. And I went, he graduated 4 years? That's the last time I was here, 4 years ago. Those of you who were here, I don't know if you remember me presenting him with a portrait. That was a print made by Joseph Casarte, who is a member of a sister church, South River Reformed Church. And he was an apprentice of Norman Rockwell. And later, after Norman Rockwell died, Joe became the artist for Saturday Night Post and created all of these incredible portraits for the Boy Scouts of America. You're very familiar with them. And I asked Joe, as Hunter left this area to go to New York State at West Point, if he could present that in honor of his young life. I'm going to have to get back to South River and tell Joe that that young man graduated. That's very interesting for me in coming here today, because just a week and a half ago, I was reading on Facebook of another young man who received the Dwight David Eisenhower Award for his young life in preparation for a military career, and his application was approved by the senators and congressmen of the state of New Jersey to be a student at West Point. And I thought that was quite incredible, coming here, knowing I'm going to be here, thinking of Hunter, and now this young fellow named Sean going to West Point as well. And I thought of something. I happen to be friends with David and Julie Eisenhower. Julie is, of course, President Nixon's daughter. David's grandson of President Eisenhower. And I contacted them and explained this to them. And I said, David, can you do me a favor? I have another young fellow who's going to West Point. He's a family friend of ours in our summer community in Ocean Grove. I said, you wrote a book about your grandfather, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Can you autograph a copy? Julie and you autograph it and write him a letter so he can slip it in there. It will have an incredible mark on him as he enters West Point. They both said to me that they would be honored to do that, and they said the day after Thanksgiving, we will mail it to him at his home. And so I thought of Hunter, and I thought of this young fella, Sean, the same paths. And that's incredible for me just to hold on to something of a significant sense of hope in young life today. And I continue to think of Hunter and now with Sean as they dedicate their lives to the service of our country and the development of their own personal life and education and their goodness. I can't help but thinking and mentioning presidents. Of course, November 22nd, 1963, today, at 1:30 in the afternoon, Walter Cronkite came on the television and announced that John F. Kennedy died from the assassination bullets. And we remember that moment wherever we were at that time, and do not want to let the day pass by without mentioning President John F. Kennedy. Lynn and I have been trying to navigate our schedules and our calendars for me to return, and each time something was marked on the calendar, something came up and we had to alter it, but here I am today. As I was approaching this Sunday, the 22nd, knowing it to be Thanksgiving Sunday, I wondered what I would say in the climate of the world scene in our nation today. We just prayed for two people, just in this congregation alone, who we are reminded of. The severity of this illness that requires that we gather in small groups with the masks on our face. What would I say of something of positive, hopefulness, uplifting, gratitude in this Thanksgiving week? Something to resurge within us a deep sense of appreciation for our country, for the world, for all of God's goodness. What word of hope could I bring to you as I stand in this pulpit with you? And as I stand here, I can't help but look at Wanza and think of Ken, your former minister, dear friends of mine for many, many, many years, and the deep affection I have for them. What sense of hopefulness in standing in this presence where so many have stood to speak of faith and hope and life for you could I share? And then something hit me as I was traveling to make my way here, that it was not so much that I needed to focus on words of hopefulness to present or an uplifting, positive joy to make us feel better in these difficult times, but to do one thing with you as I'm here with you speaking this morning. And that was just to gather with you, to be together with you, to be in God's presence, to share in His presence together, me with you. For me to just come and sit among you and be in God's presence is something that is very important for us. Malcolm Boyd, in his book, Are You Running With Me, Jesus, opens a chapter in his book about prayer. Prayer being in the presence of God. And I cannot recall exactly when the idea, Malcolm Boyd says, and way of prayer began to change radically in my own life. But it changed me so radically that my life is just a continual moment of gratitude. Prayer for me used to stand as something separate from the other parts of my life. But I have come to learn that real prayer is not so much talking to God as it is just sharing in His presence. That powerful thought of his in the emotions and the inspiration of his words just ends where we're reminded why we are here, gathered just to share in the presence of God. My friends, you and I don't get up on Sunday morning just because it's a habit to come to Annandale Reformed Church on a Sunday morning and keep things moving and keep things functioning in this hectic world in which we swirl through. But to find something in our gathering, in His presence together, that can sustain us through the experiences of these past 7, 8, 9 months. And all of life. We, as Malcolm Boyd has shared here, are not segmenting other parts of our life from moments of prayer, especially in these horrific 9 months of isolation and distancing and mask wearing and fearfulness of people losing their life. But to just be in His presence. In my first book, I wrote, the book is called God's Loving Embrace. I talk about the life we live every day. And when I inserted the story in here, I did so for the reason I'm explaining to you right now about this hectic, whirlwind, out of control life that everything seems to be today. Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland provides us with a scene where the Queen introduces Alice to the fact of what modern life is all about. And this is just great for me. Unfortunately, it is a present-day story about our lives as well. And here's how it goes. Alice never could quite make out, in thinking it over afterwards, how it was that they began. All she remembers is that they were running hand in hand, the Queen and Alice. And the Queen went so fast that it was all she could do to keep up with her. And still the Queen kept crying, "Faster, Alice, faster." But Alice felt she could not go faster, though she had no breath left to tell. The most curious part of the thing was that the trees and other things around them never changed their place at all. However fast Alice and the Queen went, they never seemed to pass anything. I wonder if all the things move along with us, thought poor, puzzled Alice. And the Queen seemed to guess her thoughts, for she cried, "Faster, Alice, faster! Don't try to talk." Not that Alice had any idea of doing that. She felt as if she would never be able to talk again. She was getting so much out of breath. And still the Queen cried, "Faster!" and dragged her along. "Are we nearly there?" Alice managed to pant out at last. "Nearly there," the Queen said. "Why, we passed that 10 minutes ago. Faster!" And they ran on for a time in silence, with the wind whistling in Alice's ears and almost blowing her hair off her head. "Now, now," cried the Queen, "faster, faster." And they went so fast that at last they seemed to skim through the air, hardly touching the ground with their feet, till suddenly, just as Alice was getting quite exhausted, they stopped. And she found herself sitting on the ground, breathless and giddy. The Queen said, "You may rest a little now." Alice looked around her in great surprise. "Why, I do believe we've been under this tree the whole time. Everything's just as it was." "Of course it is," said the Queen. "What would you have it?" "Well, in our country," said Alice, still panting a little, "you'd generally get to somewhere else. If you ran very fast for a long time, as we've been doing." "A slow sort of country," said the Queen. "Now here you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that." What a powerful statement about our life. Our busyness, our hurry, our worry. And yet on a Sunday morning we come to church here in this sanctuary. Our dear friends are with us. Why? To be in the sharing presence of Christ in our hectic, speed-by world that has us so confused, so unrooted, so detached from the mooring of what gives us our substance and our strength and our guidance. Is your life hectic like that? Mine often is. And when it is like that, I realize I'm getting nowhere. That's why I wanted to come and sit and share Christ and His presence with you today. To remind us of my quiet presence with Him. To be still and to know Him, to trust Him, to turn to Him. Sharing in the presence of Christ. The Thessalonians scripture about rejoicing in everything, taking the time, praying without ceasing, being in the presence of that perfect strength of our Redeemer friend in this room, who's helping us through these weeks and months of such national and personal trauma and despair. The world spins on, and we're worried about the increase of statistics and numbers and deaths and COVIDs, shutting down of businesses, food lines increasing, income ceasing, mortgages not being able to be paid. Oh, we just need to sit down in this week of Thanksgiving in God's presence. There's a great little cartoon that means a lot, speaks to this, regarding Pooh and Piglet. You know those characters. Well, here is an interesting story about them. It occurred to Pooh and Piglet that they hadn't heard from Eeyore for several days. So they put on their hats and coats and trotted across the 100-acre wood in the snow to Eeyore's stick house. Inside the house was Eeyore. "Hello, Eeyore," said Pooh. "Hello, Pooh." "Hello, Piglet," said Eeyore, in a glum-sounding voice. "We just thought we'd check in on you," said Piglet, "because we hadn't heard from you. And so we wanted to know if you were okay." Eeyore was silent for a moment. "Am I okay?" he asked eventually. "Well, I don't know. To be honest, are any of us really okay? That's what I ask myself. All I can tell you, Pooh and Piglet, is that right now I feel really rather sad and alone and not much fun to be around at all. Which is why I haven't bothered you. Because you wouldn't want to waste your time hanging out with someone who was sad and alone and not much fun to be around at all, would you now? Would you?" Pooh looked at Piglet and Piglet looked at Pooh, and they both sat down, one on either side of Eeyore in his stick house. Eeyore looked at them in surprise. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" "We're sitting here with you," said Pooh, "because we are your friends. And true friends don't care if someone is feeling sad or alone or not much fun to be around at all. True friends are there for anyone. And so here we are." "Oh," said Eeyore, "oh." And the three of them sat there in silence. And while Pooh and Piglet said nothing at all, somehow, almost imperceptibly, Eeyore started to feel a very tiny little bit better. Because Pooh and Piglet were there. In his presence with Eeyore. This is a story about you and me in our little cartoon. In the hectic world in which we live. In which we feel often so alone and sad or heartbroken as we deal with all of our cares, worries, pains, struggles, fears, secrets. And so Sunday morning comes, we look at our clocks on the walls, on our wrists, we get dressed and we come here. Do you know how important you are to each other? That you are sitting with each other? That you are by each other's side, that Jesus is in this room and you are sharing your presence with him and he with you? What a reassuring promise that is for us in this Alice in Wonderland world in which we hectically live and find very little breathing place for our souls. My church in New York City, which Wanza knows very well, she lived across from it and attended. The back of the church on the side street, there was a door, and it had a sign on it. No loitering. Because of the area of Washington Heights in which we were living, we wanted to discourage loitering there. But the sign went on to read, only holy loitering. Being in the presence and the Spirit of God, even when the church doors are closed. Do you keep each other in that spirit of love with each other, even when we leave here on a Sunday morning and the doors close and we go home? But you've been with each other in the presence sharing in God's love. Oh, how meaningful and thankful we should be this Thanksgiving Sunday that we have our friends here, that Jesus is here, that all of his life-sustaining, abundant promises are right here. He's sharing it with you in his presence. In Crown Heights, New York, there was a Jew, Yankel, who owned a bakery. He survived the camps. He once said, "You know why it is that I'm alive today? I was a kid, just a teenager at the time. We were on the train in a boxcar being taken to Auschwitz. Night came and it was freezing, deathly cold in that boxcar. The Germans would leave the cars on the side of the tracks overnight, sometimes for days on end, without any food, and of course, no blankets to keep us warm," he said. Sitting next to me was an older Jew. This beloved elderly Jew from my hometown I recognized, but I had never seen him like this. He was shivering from head to toe, and he looked terrible. So I wrapped my arms around him and began rubbing him to warm him up, and I rubbed his arms, his legs, his face, his neck. I begged him to hang on. All night long, hang on. I kept the man warm with this way. I was tired. I was freezing cold myself. My fingers were numb, but I didn't stop rubbing the heat onto this man's body. Hours and hours went by this way. Finally, night passed. Morning came and the sun began to shine. There was some warmth in the cabin, and then I looked around the car to see some of the other Jews in the car. To my horror, all I could see were frozen bodies, and all I could hear was a deathly silence. Nobody else in that cabin made it through the night. They died from the frost. Only 2 people survived, the old man and me. The old man survived because somebody kept him warm. I survived because I was warming somebody else. "Let me tell you the secret of Judaism," this man said. "When you warm other people's hearts, you remain warm yourself. When you seek to support, encourage, and inspire others, then you discover support, encouragement, and inspiration in your own life as well. That, my friends, is Judaism 101. Here, in this very room, sharing in his presence, there is enough love to go around. Sandy Patty sang in a wonderful Christian witness song. In this very room, there is enough love for everyone. Your heart keeps each other warm. You are kept warm because of someone near you. And you allow each other to find life and live and to have hope. Thomas Hawkins said, "The closer we draw to others," I love this, "the closer we draw to God. The farther away we move from God, the farther we move from others. When we are all willing to abandon ourselves and to fling ourselves outward in compassion and in service, we find that we have made room not just for others in our lives, but also for God in our hearts. The energy that we have massed in our own little center is spent on others, leaving an open space where God might enter. From this same God-infused center also flows the renewing energy that allows us to keep loving and serving in the world." This week of Thanksgiving, I desire to come here only Sunday that I had off when you called. And I could have taken off to do something on a weekend when I'm preaching every Sunday. Had a day off. But I said I want to be with the Annandale people. I want to share with them this promise that I've been talking about. Sharing the presence of Christ in this room through each other. I was glad when Greg mentioned to me, and I'm closing with this, that in the section of your worship liturgy, it says silence. And I said, do you play anything? He said, oh no, we just in silence. I didn't know that was going to be the case. But I happened to bring this along. This lyric I wrote, set to music by Kevin Hosiger, beautiful choral arrangement. I leave it with you, of the reason why we gather here on Thanksgiving Sunday, to share in the presence and the gifts and the abundant life for which we give our grateful, thankful hearts to God for giving to us so many blessings. Here's what I wrote. I pray it is a prayer for you. Here in the silence, Lord, speak to my yearning, my heart ever turning to you for your love. Show me your face, Lord. Help me today, Lord, to know the joy of your grace here in the silence. When fearful shadows and darkness surrounds me, make me always trust thee with all my heart and soul. Your hand will uphold me, your spirit enfold me, my sins forgiving, when from the depths I cry. I love you, Lord, my strength, my future, and my rock. When I am hungry, when I am lost on wild seas, my life is tossed. No matter where I wander, your faithful love is near. Here, in the silence, I wait for the morning, true light ever dawning with your sweet voice of love. Here, in the silence, I wait for morning, wait for the morn. Here in the silence, here in the silence. We've shared in the presence of Christ this morning. Our hearts are thankful. We come to this week on Thursday, and we remember these things. A Piglet and a Pooh story of sitting side by side as Christ came in to this sanctuary this morning to sit by you, to love you, to give you life. And for that, we give you more thankful hearts. Gracious God, slow us down. Life spins out of control sometime, even by our own doing. We think we're going someplace and we're going nowhere. Oh, rest in the Lord, wait patiently for him, and he shall grant unto thee your heart's desire. Be still and know that he is God. Feel him near, beside you, within you, loving you, embracing you, giving you life. And when we break bread on Thanksgiving Day around our tables, regardless of how many are gathered, or even if we are alone, just to tell you that because you gave your life in all of its brokenness for us and for this world, our healing, our wholeness, our hope, our joy comes simply from having shared in your presence and in your love.